Actually, hopefully you all can see my screen. Hello, my name is Brian Puente. I am one of the Adobe Creative Cloud evangelists here at the University of Arizona. I'm here along with my compatriot Alex. He's going to be helping man the chat today. And today we're talking about Adobe Dimension. What Adobe Dimension is it's a software set that you can read it all right here if you want like full details. This is just the Creative Cloud app, but it's a software set that basically allows you to create up to photorealistic renderings with 3D assets in a way that's pretty easy as far as 3D terms are concerned to jump into. And basically what we're going to be doing today is walking through that software, kind of getting you up and running with it. Let me go ahead and copy and paste this real quick into the chat here. All right, cool. All righty. So this is our workshop resource page. Got a lovely little gecko there. You'll find our workshop recording right here when we're done with the workshop. But like I said, Adobe Dimension allows you to create composites with 3D models up to a photorealistic nature. So pretty cool. We can pull off stuff like this pretty easily. Inside of there is the business cards, not the shoes and things like that. But Dimension's great for things like advertising, production design, visualizing what something looks like in a space, abstract art, which is probably my favorite thing to do in it. You can even do package design or logo and branding, and there's tons of resources inside of Dimension to help you get started. So the game plan for today is we're going to walk through, we talked about what Dimension is more or less. We're going to introduce you to the workspace like we always do. We're going to talk about adding and arranging objects. We're going to talk about how to adjust those objects and how they appear with things like materials. We're going to talk about lighting and then how to composite something, how to composite your 3D asset into an existing image. Then we'll talk about saving, rendering, and exporting. And that's kind of the game plan here. Does that sound okay with everybody? Perfect. All right. Please feel free to put questions in the chat as we go, and we will do our best to get to them. So let's go ahead and jump in here. I've already played a little bit inside of Dimension on this computer, but we're going to go ahead and get started by introducing you to the workspace a little bit. So when you first launch Dimension, you'll be greeted with something like this. There's the Explore section. Adobe recently released a software called Substance 3D. It is outside of the Creative Cloud suite at this moment, but if it ever changes, if you're at the University of Arizona, you will hear us belting it from the rooftops should we ever get access to it. But it's like a deeper dive into 3D software. For now, we're going to stick with Dimension though. So what we'll do here is across the top, we have the home button, we have design, and we have render. We're going to stick with home for now, and we're going to create new. So when we create a new project, it pulls up this kind of canvas space. I'm going to, whoops, not minimize, make it full screen. That's what we want. Make that full screen there. Awesome. So now we're inside of the design workspace here. To get started, we're going to start by, I feel like we need something on the workspace in order for us to be able to play around with it. So if you wouldn't mind, make sure that you have the selection tool selected. Keyboard shortcut for that is V. It basically activates tools so that you can transform them and things like that. Across the top here, you'll see these filtering options under starter assets. If you don't see starter assets, which you should, make sure that you're in the design workspace. In the top left-hand side, if you click and hold, if you click on this, you'll see different menus. We're gonna live in the starter assets profile today. So click on starter assets, and then under filter by, select this first one, which is objects. Cool. So we're gonna start by placing an object here. A couple different ways to do it. If you click on it once, it will just show up in the center, and I'll show you what that looks like. So click on it, it creates the shape in the center of the screen. Cool. All right, then here's our shape. I'm going to go ahead and undo that. Command or Control Z will undo. And if I click so if I do that, it places it at what's called the origin point or the center of the plane here. If I click and drag this out, I'll see this little square shows up, and then I can drop the object where I want it. So let's go ahead and we will drop this object anywhere that we like. I'll kind of put it a little bit off center here. Awesome. So there's our cube. Congratulations, you just brought in a 3D object into Dimension. Awesome. All right. So now that we have something here, I think that this toolbar will make more sense. So we're just going to go ahead and start by talking about the tools that we'll be using. So this little guy right here is the selection tool. When you use the selection tool, you'll get this little multi-widget here that gives you different things like rotation on different axes. There's the x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. So standard 2D plane is X and Y. If you've ever seen like a graph, that's it. When we work in 3D, we add depth as a dimension, and that's the z-axis. So they're represented red is X, green is Y, and blue is Z axis typically. You have a bunch of different ways to move around in there. If we use this widget, if you click on this up arrow, oops, and click and drag, you can move it up, which is pretty cool. You'll see that when you go up and you pull it down far enough, you'll see this thing snap, and that's kind of to the floor of the 3D plane you're working in. The z-axis will move it forward in z space, and it'll also tell you kind of how far you're moving it forward in centimeters. And then the x-axis will move it in x space here. And the reason why we're kind of at this like 45-degree angle, if we look right here on this bottom left-hand side, we can see what our orientation is. And that's adjustable, but I want to make sure that you're okay moving these around. If you click on these other widgets here, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom out, you can press the zoom key, Z for zoom, and then zoom in and out with the option key to zoom in on the entire plane there. But if I come over here, all right. So now I'm going to go ahead, we're going to talk about scale. So scale is the squares. If I click on this green square here, I can adjust the height of this square here. And you'll see that we're only adjusting the height on the y-axis there. If we wanted to adjust all of it together, you can hold down the shift key, then this will adjust this object proportionally. Depending on what you need, you may want to do that. Cool. All right. So then we have the rotation tools here. So we can rotate on the x-axis by clicking and dragging on that circle. We can rotate on the y-axis by clicking and dragging on the green circle. We can rotate on the z-axis by clicking and dragging the blue circle here. Cool. And you'll notice that all of these little points and arrows will rotate based off of where your object is currently rotated. So it has this kind of own axis that it lives off of. Cool. All right. So we talked about rotating all of these here. So you can also rotate these objects in any orientation you want by using the properties panel on the right-hand side. If you want to be precise, it can be a little bit easier. So you have not only your position, and you can click and drag here, or click on the parameter and press the up arrow and the down arrow to move back like 1/10 of a centimeter. If you hold down shift and press up and down, it will move it a centimeter at a time, or multiple units at a time to make it easier to kind of move stuff around. Click on the y-axis to do the same thing, and the z-axis to do the same thing. Just kind of depending, I like kind of the freeform stuff whenever we are working with just kind of playing with space, but if you want to be precise, I really like selecting the parameter and then using the arrow keys. Cool. So any questions on that stuff right now? Yeah, we're just bringing in an object, learning how to rotate it. Awesome. Cool. All right, so now we rotated the object, but let's go ahead and rotate the space that we're in, because we'll be doing that a lot, especially when we are creating and aligning multiple things. So To do that, I'm going to go ahead and bring in a couple of different objects here. We'll start with some basic shapes for now. I'm going to add a sphere, just click and drag. And I'm going to add a cone. Just going to click and drag that. And you'll see that we can put this on, we'll put this on whatever plane this lands on. So if I wanted this cone to attach to this square, just need to make sure it's on that plane and it will attach. I'm going to go ahead and scale that down a little bit. Just by using this scale Y, hold down shift. Let's see. That's okay. Cool. Okay. So now I have these guys set here. Now I want to go ahead and rotate around the area I'm working in. So to do that, we have camera tools. If you, this first one here is called the orbit tool. You'll press the number 1 to get to that. If you're not in a search field, you just click on it as well. And orbit will allow you to click and drag to move around the scene, to orbit around it. You can kind of free roam around the scene where you like, kind of set it up how you kind of angle it how you would like it. Cool. All right. So next up is the pan tool. You'll press the number 2 for pan, or click on this little cross right here. This will allow you to click and drag to pan around, kind of like a camera, up, down, left, right. And then you can switch between pan and orbit just by pressing 1 and 2. So if I like this angle, but I want to be further down, I can find this, and then without adjusting the pitch of the orbit, press 2, then I can just move down. And finally, the last one is dolly, and that's number 3. So dolly will allow you to basically kind of move the camera inward toward the object or objects. You can also, if you have a mouse, you can scroll up and down to kind of dolly in and out as well. Cool. Go ahead and select this object here. We'll see if we can get some separation between the two. Just move this up. Cool. Then we will orbit around. Then we will dolly out with 3. I'll orbit around one more time. Cool. I can kind of see all 3 of these objects in a way that I like. Awesome. So let's say that you're working and I like this angle here. I can have Adobe Dimension remember where this angle is so I can come back to it later. So I can have like a save state for this angle, which can be helpful. So to add that kind of save state over here, or a bookmark as they call it, up in your menu bar at the top, you will find not only your zoom options, you can fit the canvas or fit the selection. I'm going to go to hit fit canvas just so it all sits in there. But if I move across here, I have a bunch of different options. This one with the star over here is camera bookmarks, especially if you're working with something and you need multiple angles on it. Bookmarks can be great. So as soon as you dial in what you want, you can save it and then you can recall later. So click on camera bookmarks. Then we're going to go to the plus button here. And to create a bookmark view, we'll call this our hero shot. Or favorite or whatever, or you label whatever you want. Favorite? Cool. Then you can come back and recall that whenever you'd like. So the benefit of that is, let's say that I do one of these, and then I do one of these, and then I pan this up, and I'm not exactly where I want to be, or I use this to kind of look at this object, but I need to go back to kind of what my main shot is. Come up here to this favorite, click on favorite, snaps me right back to where I was. It's going to be an awesome tool as you start building more and more inside of Adobe Dimension. Cool. All right. Cool. So you may have noticed that on the right-hand side, you also have things like your scene, which includes all of your layers here. We'll get to what environments are and what everything else is, but you'll find all of your essentially layers here. They are top down. You'll also see a bunch of quick actions that will change based off what you select here. I'm gonna get into those further, but things like delete and duplicate and import all live right here. Cool. Any questions so far? All righty. So I'm gonna go ahead and while these abstract shapes are great, I'm going to go ahead and remove them. And I'm going to go ahead and bring in some product that maybe I want to place. We can always bring in these shapes later. So I'll go ahead and select them and I'll delete them. You don't have to delete yours if you don't want to. I just want to start with a blank canvas. And then under models here, we're going to go ahead and select a few things. We're going to select, let's see here. Scroll down. If I scroll down, if we go down far enough, there is this flip lid bottle. If I click on it, it will add it to the center of the this guy right here. And then, so that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and click on this frame selection button. The keyboard shortcut is F, and then it will basically tighten up the camera so that what I selected is in frame. Cool. So we can see that this bottle has a lid. And then the bottle itself, I'll just orbit around it. You see the lid even has like a little opening there. It's going to open stuff up. So now that we've brought this in, let's go ahead and we will work on bringing in kind of so this is the packaging. So we have the bottle, but let's go ahead and bring in the box that the bottle sits in here. So if we grab this tall box, I'll click and drag it in. I can drop it kind of behind there. We'll load that box. And we'll see that tall box is pretty tall, a little taller than we need it. So if I select the box here, I'm going to go to scale, which is the squares here. I'm gonna hold down shift. So click and drag to kind of scale that down. Make it a little bit closer to the box that we have here. Oh, thanks for hanging out, Michael. It's definitely being recorded, so you can view it later if you like. All right. So the box is about the shape that I want it. Now, let's talk really quickly about using the align tool here. So we have these two objects, and I'd like to kind of align them properly. I'll start by selecting, pressing F to kind of zoom in on both of these so I can see them well. And I'm going to select them both in the scene panel here. Just going to hold down shift and select both of them. And then I'll notice that I have under my actions, I have options for alignment. So if I click on align and distribute, if you've used align and distribute and things like Photoshop, we're kind of in similar territory, but we are working in 3D space. So they've changed the interface a little bit to make more sense inside of this space. Cool. So if I hit align and distribute here, I'll see that I have a few different things going on. Let me go ahead and get this kind of at an angle. Zoom in just a little bit. So I have these kind of teardrop shapes, but I have these bars here. So the bars here are for distributing. So if I click on this distribute X, these guys are already decently distributed. But if they were kind of offset, this would kind of help them do that. If I do, these are all kind of distributed decently enough. But if I click on these teardrops, I can adjust the alignment of these. So I can offset the axes like in an even fashion. So maybe I want these a little bit offset on the x-axis and a little bit closer on the, a little offset on the z-axis, a little bit more closer together on the y-axis here. I can select these teardrops, and these are kind of broken into thirds here and adjust just the parameters of those. So it's kind of a neat way to distribute evenly here. Then if I rotate, maybe that's a little bit more of a favorable look for my design than the original just kind of bright onset alignment there. But those alignment tools are great. I happen to use 2 objects. You can do 3 or 4 or 5 or however many you want. Just want to make sure that you are aware that if you'd like to align things together, select them both. And then you can hit the align tool to align them. Awesome. Any questions on alignment so far? All right. So now that we have a couple of objects here, let's get into what I think is the funnest part of this, and that's applying textures and making this into something that we really would like to share and work with. So let me go and move this, and then what we're going to do from here is we're going to select the object that we want to start working with. We'll start with the box. So make sure that the box is selected. You can just click away and then click back on it, or click in this layers panel over the scene panel over here. Sorry, Photoshop ideas talking. So we come over here to the box, and then the second option here is in our starter assets is going to be our materials. There are all sorts of different materials you can apply here. I'll encourage you to be bold and pick things that are interesting, but for the sake of this guy right here, let's say that each one of these comes in a cardboard box. Click there, it will apply that cardboard here. So this box is now made of cardboard, which is cool. We can look under it if we want. Then what we can do here, one of the neater things that you can do, and this does hit your computer's performance a little bit, but you can hide and show this render preview to get an idea of what your final result's going to look like as you work. So if I click on this guy, the keyboard shortcut for it is / I think. I click on that, you'll see that it will render a preview of what this is going to look like. You have little dots and stuff like that there just because it's a low resolution preview. But as we start applying more materials and things like that, this will give you a better view of what this will look like once it's finally once the render is completely finished. Cool. All righty. So we applied this. Over here. We applied this cardboard to the box, right? We have properties that we can adjust that we don't have to stick with just the default that's there. Under actions, we can also hit select material, which we already did. There's our cardboard. And if we pull down this drop-down menu, whoops, where'd you go? We have properties for this cardboard. We can repeat the pattern multiple times. So like if we zoom out, we have kind of like this. That's pretty terrible because it's literally a drawing. It's a image of cardboard. But if I increase this repeat function here, you'll see that those corrugations get smaller and smaller. If that's what we were going for, you can also adjust the roughness or how much texture there is on the box itself. There are also technical parameters you can dive into, like luminosity and contrast and things like that. But the cardboard's built to be cardboard, so I'm going to leave that alone. But I wanted to show you that, and we'll get into other parameters here in a moment. Now that we have this cardboard here, let's go ahead and we will go to our images here. This cardboard's great, but we're going to go ahead and add a pattern to this cardboard. So under your patterns here, and you can bring in whatever you would like. Let's go ahead and go with this. We'll go with this zigzag gradient. I'll click and drag that gradient. If it did it right, let's see. Well, I may not have hit the right thing. We'll give it a second here. If we didn't, we can undo it. Pretty easy. There we go. Cool. So there is our graphic there on the object. So from there, we can scale this graphic up. I'll zoom out a little bit. Hold on options to scroll out. And then, so this is a 2D graphic on a 3D plane. So you see it kind of wraps around, which is okay. We want it to wrap around a little bit, kind of like that. Cool. So you see under placement, this is set up as a decal, right? But if I wanted to fill, that's how I'll wrap it around the entire thing. So you'll see now this whole entire thing is wrapped in that picture. So you have decal. So when you bring in an object, you can apply, or when you bring in a graphic and you apply it to an object, you have the options, you have the general options of filling the entire object with the fill option, or using the decal, which we'll use both of here in a moment. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch this from, there we go. And I can select the amount of repeats that I want. It kind of looks rough because it's not built to like loop 100%. So I'll probably just set the repeat to whatever the default was for 1. I can press this and kind of rotate around. Now I have, you can see the corrugations on that cardboard. It's pretty cool. And then I have the design for my box. Awesome. So let's go ahead and we will work on the bottle now. So I'm going to go ahead and select the bottle. And please, if you have questions about that, let me know. But like I said, I think this is where stuff kind of gets cool. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply on the bottle. I'm going to go ahead and apply the same zigzag gradient. The material, by the way, on this bottle, we should probably pick that first. So I'll select the bottle here. And we'll see that the bottle under this under these layers here is broken up into the bottle and the lid. So if I select the bottle, you'll notice that my actions change, and now I have this at a select material option. So I select the material. You can go over to my materials here and then pick it. And we're going to go with, I think we're going to stick with the plastic bottle. Okay. So plastic should be already on there, but I can click and drag it, either apply it here or on the bottle itself. Give it a second to load that in. Now I have a plastic bottle. So we don't have to live with this color plastic. If we want, under base color, we can go through and we can adjust this to be whatever color we'd like. So if you want your bottle to be red, you could do that. Or if you want it to be purple, you could do that. There is an eyedropper here that will allow you to sample a color. So let's say that I want it to be this kind of purple here. You can match that, which is kind of cool. And if you find that you're working and your computer's chugging really, really hard as you're doing this, go ahead and turn off that quick preview there, and then it won't render as often. You're just going to work in this space, which still looks pretty good. Just won't have all the textures and mapping and stuff. I'm going to go ahead and turn mine back on as long as it's not bugging y'all too much. So I have that. And then I have a bunch of different parameters here, and I'm going to zoom in so hopefully we can kind of see those parameters change as we do it. So I have this purple guy right here. And then what I want to do is I want to go ahead and increase the metallic nature of it. So if I click and drag over here, basically the surface gets more and more reflective. I'll probably change that color actually to the lighter purple here. You can click and hold when you have the eyedropper tool to kind of select and get kind of a preview. And then we can kind of adjust that a little bit with a little bit lighter. Cool. All right. Awesome. So now we have this really, really reflective metallic bottle. Yours could be whatever you want if you'd like. So with that selected, what we're going to do now, if we increase the roughness of this, if you hold up a tooltip here, it kind of walks you through what they all do. So roughness is basically how shiny your surface is. So if you'd like this to be less shiny, move it to the right, and you'll see that like it just becomes duller there. So more of a satin versus like a gloss type of finish. I'm gonna go ahead and keep this gloss here though. Maybe a little bit, like 12% roughness. Cool. Alrighty, so now we're gonna go back to images. I'm going to apply a logo here. Under actions, you can place graphic just by clicking this button here. It should load up the appropriate menus on the right. And you can look for an image that you have right there, or you can go under your images in our library. And they have some logos for us to use already. So if I scroll down, I will find, we'll grab this one that says brand logo here. So click and drag, and I'll place it on top of this object. Cool. There it is. Cool. So let me go ahead and zoom out just a little bit. And I'll grab my selection tool. And then what I'm going to do is I want to rotate this, rotate this graphic here. So if I click on this little circle widget, I can rotate this. If I hold down Shift, it should lock to 15-degree increments. So I can get an exact 90 degrees. So it's up and down. And then I will scale this up. I'm going to go ahead and scale it from the properties panel. Just kind of control the scale. Awesome. Then I will click and drag to move it to the place that I want it. Cool. So put it right there. And then the kind of cool thing here that I can do is with this decal selected, this has its own brightness and metallic nature here. So if I really want this to be kind of a stark, if you ever like touched a bottle that has different textures on it, that's how we can kind of simulate that. If we increase the roughness here, it's a pretty high. I'll give it a little bit of metallic feel to it too. But we'll see that when I zoom in using the dolly, that I can have that kind of satiny look to the logo, but still have the metallic nature of the bottle. So we can kind of play with both of those and have those running at the same time. Cool. Any questions so far? Awesome. Very cool. So let's go ahead and we will take this oops. So let's go and take the same logo. We'll select the box. We'll apply it to like the top of the box here. So I'll use my orbit tool, press the 1 key, orbit above it. And go ahead and grab this logo, drop it on top. And then under this guy here, we'll make this kind of metallic and rough, like the box here. Cool. And you can place that as many places as you wanted and kind of do whatever it is you'd like to do there. But basically, when we're applying textures, it's about that simple. Whenever you apply a texture, you'll have options for it. Whenever you apply a graphic, you'll have options for that too. Let's go ahead and round this off though, because you'll notice if we go to the back to the scene here, the box is all one layer, right? But if you had something that had multiple parts to it, you can click on the file folder here. We'll show you both the lid and the bottle. So if I grab the lid here, I can apply a different, probably different material to it. So we go to materials here. Let's make the top of this brass. So I can apply brass to this. If I did it right, you see the brass only applies to the top of that bottle, which is kind of cool. And then we can kind of offset that and do things like so. One other thing that's kind of cool here, one other tool you have is you do have the ability to use this magic wand tool. I'm going to go ahead and click on this box again because I don't want let's say that I want one side of this to kind of be cardboard for whatever reason. So if I come to this back side over here, I can magic wand to basically select that plane. You see that just that forward facing plane is selected. And let's say that I wanted this side to have a different texture altogether, which makes sense. And maybe I wanted this to be kind of a see-through, for whatever reason. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll pick glass here, I suppose. We'll see how that behaves. And also that one side is glass. And then we can just apply kind of a different texture to individual sides here. Cool. Any questions so far? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and undo that. And we'll just kind of work with this. So we have our design here. We're going to go ahead and go back to our favorite and see if it's still good. Not really all that great. So let's go ahead and we'll apply another one for this. We'll zoom in here a little bit. And then we'll add a new bookmark. Then we'll call this, I think view 2 is fine. Awesome. So now that we have some stuff textured and we have it kind of where we want it, the next thing that we'll talk about is how to add text. Because if you wanted text to show up on your screen in 3D space, you have that option too. And text can do a whole lot. And there are a lot of different parameters inside of it. So if we go back to our objects here, you'll see that this first option here is text. So if I just click on it, it shows up. It's just some lorem ipsum over there. We can use the pan or the dolly tool to dolly out a little bit. Just press 3 and click and drag to dolly out. Cool. Now I've got my selection tool. I'll move this over and up. Cool. All right, so then to adjust my text here, we can't double click on this area, unfortunately, but under our properties, we have this text field here that we can type in whatever we want. It can be as long or as short as you like. I'm going to go ahead and type in the best. Sounds like a good catchphrase. Sweet. So now that I have that decided here, I have all the scale and rotation options that I could want, just like we had before. And I'm just dollying in here and then moving this up a little bit. Whoops. With the keyboard shortcuts, make sure you're outside of text fields, or else you'll just type what's there. All right. So we can choose font. We basically have access to all of the fonts that we have, or most of them, I should say. So we can go with something kind of crazy, something to kind of match what we have here. So let's go with, we don't have to match it necessarily, but we'll see. Let's go with this. You can pick whatever text you want if you're playing along. I'm going to go ahead and go with this guy right here. Cool. So that works for me. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on the text just a little bit because there are a whole lot more options I'd love to share with you. All right. So I just dollied and then panned so we can see these a little bit better. The first option that we have is depth. You'll see that like our depth is set to 1 centimeter. We can set our depth to whatever we'd like. So if we want this to be really thick text because we're going to rotate it and we really want to see it, we can add depth there. I'm just going to orbit around to show you. I'm going to turn off this preview here while we're working because it runs a little faster. So there's that, right? And then we can. And we still have all the options for materials and things like that. So we can add a material here in a moment. But if we go down to bevel and we flip that toggle switch on, we can do some pretty interesting bevels here And every font will be a little bit different. You'll see this one kind of broke a little bit right there. We can probably fix it by adjusting it back down. So we can apply kind of a bevel to this. We can adjust not only the width, but the angle of the bevel. So like where that bevel is coming from, or how much it's extruding as it creates that. There are repeats here. So if we wanted kind of like a deeper bevel, that B might not be the best example here. So let's go ahead and pick a different font. We'll go with that one. Let's see if it's any better. There we go. Cool. Sometimes the stylized fonts, you may have to play around with it. You can also adjust the space in between each repeat. So you can kind of get this really kind of textured feels to these bevels here. You also have a ton of different bevels to choose from. So if we wanted more of a convex bevel, or like kind of digs into the text, we have that there. We can again adjust the width of this. I'll turn down the repeat to 1 because I like that a little bit better. And we can adjust the space of that bevel and the angle. You see if we really wanted this kind of like jutting out, or like convex bevel, I guess you have that round. I think I liked the just classic bevel for this one. Cool. All right. So now we can apply some materials to this. Let's go to our material. We won't do anything too crazy. We'll kind of match the brass on the bottle top there. Cool. So there's kind of our text and how we have it. We'll go ahead and we'll rotate this text a little bit, just so it's a bit more in line with this guy. I'm just going to hit select, and I'm going to rotate on the y-axis just a little bit. Push it forward. Bring it down. Cool. Alrighty. I'm just going to use this little frame tool here because everything feels a little lost to me. There we go. Got it all in view, which I like. Awesome. All right. So any questions on adding text and adding texture to that text? It's all pretty simple. Straightforward. How are we feeling so far? What about adding fine print to the bottom? What about adding fine print to the bottle or the box itself? For example, add a list of ingredients that would be done in this program. That's a great question. So what I would do in that case, if we wanted to add like labeling and things like that, I would create your labeling in a thing like in an application like Photoshop, and then save that labeling as a PNG probably for this, just a decently high resolution one or JPEG, and then you would go through and bring that in as a graphic, and then make that a decal. Then you can affix it where you want it. Does that make sense? I probably wouldn't make it 100. I wouldn't go typing this in there. Like really, we're dealing with 3D tools here. I would make that in a separate program and bring it in. It'll function just like a decal. Does that make sense? Yeah, and it's easier, it's more editable, and I think just a little bit less headachy. Cool, great question. All righty, so now that we have this kind of put together, and I'll go ahead and preview this, you can kind of see that with that preview on, this behaves significantly differently. See how much brighter that is? Because it's brass, is going to react to the light differently and more. So let's go ahead and now we're going to talk a little bit about lighting. Now we've kind of gone through some of the basics here. You can get way deeper into all of these things with all the parameters, but I'm going to show you the basics here. So now let's go ahead and light this. So a bunch of different ways to play. We'll kind of work our way through all of them. So if we go to our, if we go to filter by lights. Cool. You'll see that we have a couple of different lighting. There's some different lighting to work with here. We have our environment lights, which are going to be the easiest ones to work with. They're almost one button pushes to kind of get them where you want them here. So if I'm fine with this being on white, but I kind of want to just build an environment here, I can click on this Studio Warm key. And this will load a lighting preset here to give us kind of a nice soft look. If we go to my preview here, I can toggle that on and off. But you'll see that like we have some nice yellows here, nice warm studio light. We can adjust the intensity of that and the rotation of it. So what happens here, if you're unfamiliar, if you've ever seen a movie like where they have like this circular ball, like that's different colors to kind of capture what light looks like falling in different directions. That's what a lot of 3D artists use to match light when they're when they're trying to superimpose something that they have to bring in from visual effects into a movie. They'll typically use those little circular metal balls, and they'll also use a 360 panorama of the lighting situation. And you can see that here. If you take a look at yours, you can see all the different lights and how they're set up. So really what Dimension is doing is it's looking at the different intensities of like luminosity and color that are in this image, and then creating lights, and then creating like a lighting setup that literally wraps around our object here and creates that look and feel. Like I said, environmental lights are the easiest to work with just because there are really only two things. How much do you want that environment to be influenced? And then how do you want this to be rotated? You also have the option to colorize the light. So if you know you wanted all this light white, you can do that. Or I don't know, if we wanted this light more like yellow, we can pull that in there, and it's still using the same image as kind of like the reference, but everything is tinted in yellow there. And that might be what you're looking for here. So let's go ahead and we'll take a moment real quick to, this looks okay. I'm gonna go ahead and rotate this a little bit actually with the orbit tool. Just kind of get a little bit like that. And I'll select this guy, we'll rotate it a little bit. Let's select the text, and then we will, once it's selected here, turn that off. You do tend to work a little bit faster if you toggle on and off the that preview as you need it. I can toggle that back on to kind of see what that will look like. Cool. All righty. I'll move this to the right a little bit. But you'll see it will slip out and back into that preview, and it has to re-render out that kind of rough preview every single time you do it. Cool. All right. So now that we've done that one, and you'll see that under your scene, we have this environment light here. There are little eyeballs here that hide and show different objects. If I click on this eyeball here, it will hide that, and then there's no light at all. So your environment typically needs some sort of light. So we can kind of toggle these on and off. And if I remove this, just press delete here, we'll see that there's no longer, and there's no environment for this to live in, and it's pretty dark. So let's go ahead and pick this kind of low-key studio light, which I think is the default that comes in there. So you have all of these different ones to pick from. And if you wanted to, you can go in and adjust values for any of these. So let's go with this kind of colored stage light here. And we'll see that this is significantly more colorful. And you can see kind of that what it was this kind of like multicolored stage and set with all these different lights and stuff like that. And we can adjust. So if we really wanted this to be like super influenced by it, we could crank this way up. And if we preview it, all these crazy colors are impacting this. I'm going to go back to the studio light though. Just keep it simple. And then the next thing we'll talk about are directional lights, which are up here at the top. And these we have way more options to customize. So if I click on 3-point light, I will add that here. And you'll see that these lights can stack on top of each other. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the environment light. Turn it off. Maybe. There we go. Cool. And then we have 3 lights to work with. These 3 lights are kind of are completely adjustable here. So my key light's going to kind of be my main light here. So if I click on key light, then I can choose where that key light's going to be. If you've ever lit stuff for film or photography, key, fill, and backlight are pretty common terms. Key light is the main light source that you have. The fill light is typically a light, and Alex, feel free to correct me here, is typically a light on the side or around it that helps fill in shadows, because you want shadows, but you may want to fill them in with a little bit of light. And then backlight is going to be what's lighting the background, and also and those 3 things help separate an object from the background that they're in typically. So a standard 3 light setup is a key light, a fill light, and a backlight. So we're going to start by adjusting the key light here. So we can adjust the rotation of this individual light here. And you'll see how the heavy shadow falls down there? That's because it's our main light. So we can choose kind of where this rests and how it works. And then we can also adjust the height of that light. I like using the sliders here just because I think that this visually makes some sense. Just so that shadow kind of stretch. And you can also adjust the rotation of it and the color here. So if I wanted this key light to be purple for whatever reason, that main light is purple, but the other 2 lights are 2 different colors, and I can adjust those all independently. So that works for me. And then I kind of have like the purple kind of reflecting off of the render here, which is awesome. We can also choose the shape of the light. So this is a square light, so like a square softbox. We could also go with a circle if we wanted it to feel more like a spotlight. And that will adjust how the shadows fall and how they're cast. We can choose to soften up the edge of the light. And that will kind of soften up our shadows and then provide a little bit more, just a different like lighting feel to it. All sorts of stuff you can do. You can also click on this button if you prefer just to aim the light using your canvas. Like let's say that you are very, very comfortable with placing lights like in physical space. You can use this aim and point light with the one selected to be able to aim the light at the thing you want it to look at, and then it will adjust that accordingly. So if I really wanted to aim this light at the bottle, I could do that. If I wanted to aim this light at the bottom, it basically will adjust that light for me based off where I click. Think of it that way. I don't know that I'm the best at this. So I might use those sliding parameters to do it, but you have all of those options there. And you can go through and choose each one for the kit, for the fill, the key, and the backlight. You can turn on and off each one individually. So if all you wanted, for whatever reason, was just the key light, we could do that. And then this is just being lit from the single source. And yes, you have kind of all of that flexibility there. And again, I'm just trying to kind of show you all of these tools here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get rid of this 3-point lighting system. Just by selecting it all, I'm going to click on the first one, hold down shift, click on the last one, maybe. Under actions, I can select each one and then toss it in the trash. Oh. I'm going to go ahead and turn off that preview because it is slowing this thing down just a little bit. We'll bring it back. All right, cool. So the last one I want to talk about is sun. So the sun light one works like the sun. Basically, the idea is it emulates the sun and kind of how it sits in the sky up above overhead. We can do the same things like adjust rotation and stuff like that. Like that to fall on the front. We can adjust kind of how high the sun is in the sky. You'll even see that like we get like this sunset kind of feel once we get really close. We can rotate it out the other way. We can also adjust for how cloudy it is, and that's going to soften up our shadows and things like that. And if I go to preview, we'll see that it tries to kind of emulate how the sun would fall on this as it kind of rotates through. There we go. Let's go with that. Get a little higher in the sky. Cool. You have all of those here. And again, the idea is that we can kind of work with these together. Let me go ahead and I'll zoom in. I'll rotate this just a little bit more. And now that we're at this stage of the game, we're getting close to the end here. But let's go ahead and talk about rendering out a quick preview. Let's say that you're working on this and you need some feedback from people you're working with on it. This little quick preview is great for you, but to get a little bit higher quality one, you can go to the share button up here on the top left-hand side. And then we can snapshot as a PNG. Then we'll save that. And once we save it, it'll ask where we want to do it. We're going to call this the best snapshot. You want to pick where you want to find it so it's easy to locate. I'm going to go ahead and go with my desktop here. You can save it wherever you'd like. And then once it's done rendering, if we go to our Finder, you'll see I have a lot of things on my desktop. I can look at this, and I would argue that that looks pretty good. That's a decent representation of what we were doing there. Again, we're just playing with ideas and playing with light and stuff like that, but you can send this out as a preview to somebody. This is pretty low res. This is a pretty low resolution here. When 3D renders, then typically there are multiple passes taken on it to dial in exactly how something looks and get those textures perfect. This is really just a very, very quick look at what these objects look like. A few other ones that I rendered earlier are things like this. So it's just a really quick look. And if we were to double click on this and then zoom in, we can kind of see our lines start to get kind of ugly and break a little bit. But the idea is that this is what this is a quick look at what this looks like. And that can be great because rendering can take a long time. So those quick previews really help you kind of visualize where we're going. And then the full render would be like the full resolution, beautiful look at what this looks like. Cool. So now that we've gone through all of that, and hopefully we understand how light works. Is there any questions on those lights before we move on to making this, and before we move on to adding a background? Cool. All righty. So to add a background, we can go to this under filter, go to images here. All right, and then these are the ones that are stock here, but you could bring in your own images if you'd like. We're gonna go ahead and use one of these though. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on, you probably want this, if we're doing product photography, like pretty commonplace is a table. So let's go ahead and import it, click on this to import the table as the background. So cool. The background is there. We can absolutely use our orbit and rotation tools to try and kind of set the floor for ourselves. There's even a grid to help us out. So we can probably get pretty close. But if you didn't want to do that, or in my case, I didn't really understand how to do it, let's say that that's the case, we do have this beautiful button called Match Image. What Match Image will do is it will resize our canvas to the image's aspect ratio. It will create multiple lights to match the image that we have based off of Adobe's AI engine taking a look at it. And it will also match the perspective of it for us. So it will kind of sit it, if it sees a flat plane that it can analyze, it will place it on the table for us. Kind of combining all three things we just talked about. And it can be a great starting off point or the only point that you need. Let's try it out. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK here. Let's have it match the image. It's going to analyze the image, try and find where it feels the vertical plane or horizontal plane is, and place this on this object for us. Can take a moment to do. But once it's done, we'll see that we're a little low here. So that's pretty easy to remedy. We'll grab our pan tool and we'll pan up. And we can pan back a little bit. And we can dolly back. And we'll see that this more or less looks like it's on the table here. I think that the text kind of threw it off a little bit, but we can see our shadows are falling how we want them to. The best thing is showing up how we want it, and then we can make our adjustments here. So if you like how this looks, as opposed to adjusting the planes that we're on, I would adjust the objects. So if I really wanted this the best text there, which I'm not sure that I want, but I'll go down to my text and just make sure I have it selected. Use the selection tool here, and then we will rotate this just a little bit on the, let's go with x-axis. And again, I'll go ahead and turn this off, especially when you're making like big changes. I really like positioning it. Whoops, my bad. Let's go to rotation here. I really like turning off that preview, just so it's a little bit easier to kind of work with. And then I'll go to the box and the bottle. I'll select them both more or less at the same time. I'll pull them forward and maybe to the left a little bit. Cool. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a quick snapshot as a PNG just to see where we're at. I'll call this the best table. All right. We'll go to our desktop here. I'll take a look at that. Then we can really see where that quick preview is kind of more of a draft, right? But this looks okay. And I think what I'm going to do now, though, is I'm going to go ahead and hide the best part. I'm going to go and take this text and I'll hide it. And then let's go ahead and put this, just show you can do it more in one place. Let's go ahead and put this on this city backdrop. So we can make these adjustments kind of on the fly as we need to. We'll readjust our cameras for us as long as we put in that action. So this will probably be the one that I wind up going with once it's done here. Let that load. Turn that off. Sweet. So again, because I have a flat plane that's pretty detectable, I can match all of these guys and match even the camera's perspective. So we'll try and kind of analyze where it sits and even how the camera has been placed in the frame. And put these guys kind of right where we think we want them, which is super cool. And again, we can adjust this, maybe scale these up, make them bigger. Just for giggles here, we'll put this on a table. Since these are a little smaller. One more time. Cool. And we will match these. I don't even want to use this, so I'm going to get rid of it. The text here, I'm just going to go ahead and hit delete. And then we will, with our background selected, match it adjust the perspective of it. It'll run one more time. And you'll see that it kind of places all of these lights for us. Cool. And then we can save it as a snapshot to kind of see where we're at. I don't necessarily, I might scale these up just a little bit. So if I select them both, I'm going to go ahead and scale these up to like 1.25. Okay. So if you don't have this little link turned on, they won't, it'll only widen it. So let's go ahead and go with 1.5. Maybe. There we go. Cool. Feels the frame a little bit better. Awesome. So see the light is matching. It looks great. I can do another quick snapshot as PNG with all of this bright table. Snapshot. Cool. I'll give it a second because it does have to kind of output that for us. I think I saved it to the desktop. There we go. Cool. So that's looking pretty good. Now what we'll do, now that we have that there, are there any questions about that match light thing? It is pretty amazing. And in my opinion, like it can take a whole lot of, you can take a whole lot of the guesswork out of picking where your lights are here. Just for fun though, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pick a different material here because we've been dealing with kind of opaque materials, but if we pick a transparent one, we go under our materials here. I'm partial to gelatin myself. So if I click and drag this and I apply it to this box, not that your box will be made of gelatin, but let's say that for whatever reason it was. I'm going to go ahead and turn down the opacity of this graphic here. Just so kind of, you can use that opacity to kind of imply texture. And then if we preview it, we'll see that light reacts really differently to this gelatin here. It's just a fun texture to use. Actually, we'll leave this. I'm going to back that up here real quick. I'll add one other element. I'm just undoing. Go ahead and turn that off. Just get back to my cardboard. There we go. All right, so we're gonna add another object here. So I want like a splash because like we have some pretty cool splashes and things. I'll make that gelatin just for fun. There are a bunch of different splash icons and things like that that are down here under our splash assets. Gonna go through here. Let's pick this one. This splash A. We can import that. And we'll rotate that on the x-axis to pull it forward. Maybe. There we go. Cool. We'll move it. And then we will rotate it on the z-axis. Again, just to kind of have it maybe wrap around this for fun. Move it up a little bit. Cool. Sit there. Then we will rotate it again. Rotate it on the z-axis. Rotate it on the x-axis. Or rotate y a little bit. Just so maybe it's a little bit easier to kind of see that stuff. Cool. And then we'll apply like a more transparent texture. That's probably a more natural fit. Let's go with ice. Cool. Nice. All right, sweet. So now let's go ahead and preview that. Then we can see that kind of transparency is sitting within that. Cool. And you'll see that the shadows are falling on it, which is cool. And then what we'll do last here is we're going to go ahead and render it. So now that we have this kind of how we want it, we go to the render section here. We're going to keep the current view for the render, but you can have multiple views out if you wanted. We'll give this an export name. We'll call this render workshop. Workshop, cool. And then you'll pick your quality here. It depends on what you're going for. If you want like a perfect render, you'll definitely want to go high quality, but it does take a really long time. Renders are a great time to take a break. Keep an eye on your computer to make sure that you can see what's happening. You can render as a Photoshop document in either 16 bits or 32-bit channels based on how much like color depth information you want. You can also render it out as a PNG if it doesn't need to go anywhere. I'm going to go ahead and hit render here while we're talking. But basically, this is where you wait for your render, and this takes like the biggest amount of time. I'll give you an estimated time remaining. I do have something else kind of pre-baked if this feels like it's going to take a really long time. I don't think it will. It's not too much. But basically, it will generate a preview for us as a Photoshop document where we have access to manipulate the colors and looks of every different file here. We won't be able to manipulate where it sits in 3D space, but we will have access to manipulate basically everything else. And you'll see this render kind of start to build as we're working here. So it takes multiple passes in order to get, it goes through multiple passes in order to try and get rid of a whole lot of these little like dots and aliasing and stuff like that. If I went with a full render, it would probably yield an even better result. But as you can see, this will take a little bit of time to do. You can take snapshots during the process. So if you wanted to share with someone how a render was sitting as we were working, you have the option to take a snapshot right there. But as this is rendering, what questions do we have? Well, while I cook, go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I was thinking, my first thought with 3D was thinking that it would be kind of cool to see, like, imagine I'm an instructional designer, so I'm trying to help the faculty create, ways to get to the students. So I was thinking it would be kind of cool to create like if they were going to create some sort of little video where they're moving around a 3D object as part of like a video that they create to give to the students as like a replacement of like a lecture or whatever. So this doesn't really necessarily seem like the software where we're taking a tour of a 3D object. We're like making the 3D object and then exporting it as an image. Right, this doesn't really, there's not like a feature within Dimension where you can create like a tour, like a recorded tour of the 3D object, right? That's not necessarily the point of the software.
It is not necessarily the point of the software, but it can play well with Adobe Aero, which is an AR experience. And if you imported your models into Aero and then set them up, then you can have Aero on your phone and then basically do like a handheld like tour of what this looks like. If they were trying to like maybe show what does this particular molecular structure look like, for example, that seems like something that you might want to walk through and like look at and point at things out in. You totally use something like Aero for that.
Okay, and so you had an introduction to Aero that I could go back and watch. I didn't see that one yet. So if I watch that one, it might be a little bit more obvious than along. Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and Aero has really cool things like interactables that you can set up. So like so you could even like create the tour, then give it to the students and they could load Aero or the Aero viewer on their phone. And then like they could kind of see and look around this object on their own. And when they approach it, like there are approach triggers so that when you get to a certain, a certain distance, it moves or does something, or there's some stuff you can tap on that will do other triggers. So if you're looking for like a more immersive experience, I might look at Aero.
Okay, but this would play friendly with that, where you could build it and then. Okay, yeah. So then just to summarize, I'm picturing like the diagram of a brain, let's say. And so
Yeah.
you've got different quadrants of the brain, and it's a 3D object. So between this and arrow, you can almost create where they could rotate around the brain and click on different parts.
Yeah, I mean, so you're not doing any modeling inside of this software. Like it really does require like existing models, but there are tons of resources to get like 3D models of a brain and stuff like that. And you could bring in that 3D model of a brain, you could texture it inside of something like Dimension, but chances are it's textured already. And you can bring it into Arrow and then adjust it, if that
Okay.
makes sense. Yeah.
Or I could probably do it all in arrow, is what.
Yeah, you could, like I said, you'd need the objects. Like you would need like the 3D object, like you need the 3D brain object created somewhere else or from somewhere.
Okay.
Okay. And once you have those objects, you can bring them into Arrow and build the scene out, if that makes sense.
Yes. Okay. That does make
Cool.
sense.
Cool.
Thanks.
But yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea, though. I'd love to kind of, if once you kind of get there, I'd love to kind of see where you go.
Seems like a long-term thing here, but yeah, we were just talking about, now that we're back in person though, that like my college is probably going to be printing out like actual, 3D printing models of things. So I don't know if it's necessary, but it would still be kind of cool to create.
It might be cool, like for any online stuff that you do, and like for them to be able to imagine, like, look at this Arrow document for homework.
Exactly.
And tell us what you see, that type of stuff. So that way they can kind of look at it at home. I forgot what I called this thing, which is a bad render workshop. Got it. So let's go ahead and take a look at this kind of final rendered piece here. Can we use the same methods, but with the shape of our own? Like I'm a handbag designer and program obviously doesn't have a design. Yes, you would be able to. So you said you're a handbag designer. You would have, that object would have to be 3D for you to be able to light it. But there are things like, and you can find all sorts of 3D objects here. These are just the ones that are in here. If we go to our objects, for example, and you can search for more, like there are boxes, and like I think the closest thing I have to a handbag here is this gift bag. I could drag this gift bag here, and then import the pattern that you made, put it on the gift bag, and then do the product. And then basically you're doing, the cool thing about this is like, and hopefully you're seeing it, like it's virtual product photography essentially. So we kind of bring that bag in here, apply the textures that we wanted to on it. These are just the demo ones. You can bring in your own. And on the support articles, it walks you through specifically how to bring in your own assets. But we can kind of basically, before you ever go into production, preview what that pattern is going to look like on the 3D object that you have to get a sense of where you're at, which I think is what you're going for. And you can, again, with that 3D object, you can do everything we talked about. We can adjust all of these parameters and dig really deep and select different things on different planes and all of that stuff. So yeah, Angelica, I think that would be a great use for this software. You would just need to either build or have the 3D asset. Yeah, there's lots of options and like 3D scans that you can take. Places like Catalyst, the Catalyst Studios at the main library might be a great place to ask some questions about like, how can I build a 3D asset, or where do I find them? And we have resources too, and I'll link some more and put them on this Spark document when we're done. But that would be where I'd start. Cool. So finally, if I render this out as a PSD, I can open this up in Photoshop. And then this is what this looks like inside of Photoshop here. Okay, all right. All right. So let's go to, so chat's in the way here. So we have our different layers here that we can manipulate, right? But we also have the alpha channel for them. So we can go through and basically we have the ability to, what did I do here? I'm gonna do that. Let's see. I don't want to use the dodge tool. I want to use the selection tool. There we go. All right. Let's go ahead and hide this material layer. So the cool thing about this is that it will automatically create for us not only information that we can use for other parts of creating inside of here. So we have our background. It's already perfectly composited out. So I can hide my background, insert another one. Like if I wanted this, but then I wanted like a new fill layer. Let's see, let's go with the gradient here. And I wanted this kind of like bluesy kind of gradient. Move that to the bottom here. I can swap out my background and just kind of place this wherever I want. And then I can, we were talking about adding text and things like that previously. Like it may be way nicer to add, especially if it doesn't need to be 3D, although there are 3D options here. We could add that type, the best MRIS, I think is what it says, or Miris. And then kind of place that where we want it. I include like all the, you include all the drop shadows and stuff like that. But the idea is that you can build your preview in 3D. And again, this was a medium grade render. If you have a lot of time, that longer grade render will get rid of a whole lot more of these like little dithering spots. And really, I would argue that if I were in a class where I had to kind of generate what does this product look like, that's not too bad. And you can kind of get way deeper with it and kind of play with it and bring in other objects and then color those objects and manipulate them. I just kind of showed you what's stock in there. You can kind of take that and run with it. On this resource page, I can add a few places where you can get additional 3D assets if that would be helpful. But there's some really great stuff just kind of baked in. But what other questions do we have? I know that we're running short on time, but thank you so much for taking a moment to hang out for the workshop. Hopefully this was helpful and you learned something. And if you have any questions, I'll be around to answer them. If not, we'll catch you next time as far as the recording is concerned. And I'll be around for a little bit if there are extra questions.